Also, like I was doing back squat, I was doing chin-ups with extra 60 kilos was my personal record. And also very close to one-arm chin-ups. I have lots of videos where I'm like doing like chin-ups like this with just holding like a little bit on the side.
Right.
So I was really, really close. And to my surprise, all of this training, which people thought was like the most athletic, most functional, if I played any sports, if I did martial arts, it had almost no transfers at all. Like the crossover was almost non-existent. Of course, there was some crossover, but it was not optimal functional training at all. It was all some theory which didn't actually translate into the real world. And that's the thing. Like even today, you see lots of these guys preaching about, yeah, this is the most athletic, the most functional, superhuman strength, blah blah blah. But they never test it outside of their training. Like they focus on the front levers, they focus on the gymnastics, they focus on the back squats. But where is the performance out of it? Like we train mixed martial arts, we train different sports. I do all kinds of stuff, and all the time I see improvements, but it's not from that type of training, it's from the other type of supplementary training.
And so that's, I think, is the problem is that there's nothing wrong with doing this training, calisthenics or something like. Of course, it's a form of strength training. If you do it well, it builds up the structure of your body. But the problem is that it is the how people like define it's functional or how people market it kind of to the world. That is the problem, because it doesn't usually bring the kind of results that people are now thinking it will bring, or it's not as, let's say for example pull-ups or a planche, or let's say pull-up. A pull-up is probably not as useful as you really think it is. Like it doesn't.
It's overrated.
Yeah, it's overrated in many aspects, especially when it comes to this kind of like many sports and performance there. But when it comes to the calisthenics, that's like the main exercise. That's where you want to get the best. You want to do the 20 reps, and then you're supposed to be somewhere. Whereas in reality, it's actually the difference between able to do 5 pull-ups and the ability to do 20 push-ups might not have any difference whether you are better in performance in sports or martial arts or something. It might not make honestly like any difference. You might be on such a different level on your pull-up skill and your pull-up strength, but it makes no difference whether you perform better on the field or not. The same we can talk about like plunge. People think like that's insane, like
strength.
Skill, yeah, strength or something. But in reality, whether you can do a plunge or you can do 10 good push-ups, it's again almost the ability to do those push-ups well is better for the athleticism. So of course there's its own hierarchy within the calisthenics world where you're kind of growing and getting these skills. But the hierarchy there might not have almost any impact on the performance that is outside of them. Like, well, we use the mixed martial arts a lot as a reference because that's what we're doing, and we notice that it requires such a versatile aspect from your body. You know, you need to have your strength moving low on the ground, like movement training. You need to have the strength on your legs to move in a very dynamic manner. You need to be explosive. You need to have endurance. You need to have mobility in many in your joints in a good way. So
and then there are also stand-up wrestling, and also the ground.
It's on all levels. So I think it's a great, you know, of course there's other ways where you can reference your functionalism, but I like to put it like, think about a broad spectrum of sports, like what transferred to a very broad spectrum of movements. And like I said, calisthenics, if used well, is the exact same as, you know, any good strength training that you could be doing. But here's also the deal is that, because many people do the calisthenics solely, I actually did calisthenics in the beginning only because I thought it's healthier, it's more natural, and it's more functional than, for example, weightlifting. So these were like the main things, and I think I noticed there's many people who still think calisthenics and bodyweight training, it's more functional, it's healthier, and somehow it's better or more functional than weightlifting. But this is not the case at all. Like weights, for me, weights and bodyweights are exactly the same in some sense, because it only depends, it's just good strength training if you do it well. Like they're all build up a certain foundation, like we do, because we do calisthenics in movement clinics, we do weightlifting in athlete clinics, like we use all of these. But that is
like
not...
it doesn't matter, like there's no difference.
Exactly. It's really, it is all about you and how you do this training. It doesn't matter at all whether you do weights. You can have extremely risky and dangerous training by just using your body weight. And like the calisthenics athletes are one of probably the most injured athletes like out there. Like, I don't know, but there's a lot of people who tear their
elbow issues
biceps
and shoulders.
elbows, yeah, and shoulders. So
yeah, what I would say is that people should not call gymnastics and calisthenics and even powerlifting, they should not call it proper strength training, and they should not call it athletic training, and they should not call it functional training. It's not good for any of those things. Of course, there is crossover, there's transference, but if you talk about real functional training, it should be training that is really optimal for the functional purposes. And if it's athletic training, it should be like supplementary training for your sport, for your athleticism. And if it's like this, so all of this, what people are doing right now, and they think it's functional, they think it's athletic, it's and so on, they should get that out of their head and just realize that they are doing a very separate sport, which is good for the sport. Like you talk about the planche, it doesn't, like if you can do a front level or planche, it doesn't matter at all in most sports and activities. And the reason is because of sport specificity. Like if you want to have training that is the most optimal for your functional purposes, like what you want to do, and if it's the most optimal for your athleticism in your area of focus, then it has to be in the realm and in the world of where you are playing the sport or fighting or doing this thing. So because the problem is with gymnastics and calisthenics is that you are allocating so much energy, so much time, and so much effort to this part of training that has very little sport specificity, and it is called gymnastics rings and hanging on a bar. Like you are getting amazingly good at hanging on a bar and doing things when you hang on a bar, or likewise you are getting amazingly good at hanging on gymnastic rings or being on the top of gymnastic rings. But most, like Eero said, most sports and martial arts, wrestling, grappling, and all these things, they happen on the ground. Not all of them, the swimming and all of these things, but most happen on the floor. And if you really want to do training that is optimized for functionality and athleticism, your training should also focus mostly on the floor.
Yeah, and what we discussed one time, like is related to this. So the most functional training is always the sport specific training, like whatever, like if you have a sport where you're like doing like golf swing, right? Or you have a sport where you're throwing like punches, hooks or something like this. So you can always find like training where you try to find movements that are as close as possible to the movements that you're replicating actually in the sport. So you need to like search a little bit about your body and see like how can you emulate this kind of positions, the same positions that happen in the sport, how can you put those into an exercise? For example, this I think is the real functional training for some sort of functional trainers who are doing like crazy stuff with the Bosu balls and rubber bands and combining this and standing on one leg, and it's like the point is that it would emulate something into actual like a function on the field when you're doing whatever sport it might be. So you would create exercises based on those sports. They need to have some sort of reference point to the sport and of course the universal nature of the body. But you can't just create them out of a thin air, out of your head like this, like you think that it's smart training, that you're combining all these things, but it may not have any sort of end point. So if you want to have training that has functional carryover to any kind of sport, you need to study that sport and then see if you can find exercises that would actually have the best carryover to that, like really like emulate those movements.